Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snider. My guests are Gabriel Sabatini, Ryan Moody, and James Horak. James, are you there?
Hi.
Good to hear your voice, James. And we've got a couple new guests. Gabriel Sabatini, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hey, how's it going?
My
name's Gabriel Sabatini. I'm a LMU film production major, and I basically have done a lot of personal research on the topics of police brutality and following closely with Second Amendment activities in California, along with just national news about police shootings. So that's sort of my interests of this last 2 or 3 years. So I'm hoping I can have some insight on that topic.
And Gabriel,
tell me about the video you made.
And yes, I've also done a documentary. It's not fully released, but it's on Vimeo called Use of Force, and it's basically about the issues that people run into when they encounter violence with the police, what kind of repercussions they encounter on both sides, the police side and on the civilian side or citizen side. And it basically goes into some of the issues that we face today in our police force and as citizens walking around with the police in force. So it's hopefully an eye-opener for most people.
I have the perfect clip. Sorry to interrupt you. I have the perfect clip that talks about it was a video made live during the second shooting at Ferguson, and I don't know if you guys know about that. And I know we've got another caller here, Ryan Moody, correct? Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I'm going to play this clip, and it seems apropos if you want to talk about police brutality today. This is a shocking clip. Let's listen to this.
The police gonna pull up. Y'all call the police? I didn't want it. We bagging up. He got a gun out. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. They got their guns out. Get it. Oh my God. They just killed him. Oh, here we go again. They just killed this man. He's dead. Put him in cuffs. He's dead. Oh my God. They just killed this man. He didn't have a gun on him. Now they cuffing him. He already dead. He already dead. Y'all see it for yourself. The man is already dead. They're cuffing him. From the time it started in everything. Oh my God. They just killed him, y'all. He said he's dead. This is just like, I don't even know what to do. Oh my God. He's still holding his gun out. The man is dead. They could have tased that man. They shot and killed that man. Oh my God. This is crazy. I don't even know what to do.
Yep, got it.
Got back up. Oh my God.
Back up to the corner right now, please.
You can smell the gunfire. We bagging up, sir. No, he's dead. Fucking honey buns, dog. That shit over 2 fucking sodas, y'all. They could have tased that man. Y'all see that for yourself. They could have tased that man. Oh my
like, hey, take it around their card. This whole time.
Get over here and time. Come over here, man. Come on. You down. Hey, come over here. Come on. Get your ass over here. Get away from that.
In the United States, it seems we are descending into a police state, and I was very impacted by this clip, and I've played it on several shows, and I wonder if I could get James Horak to comment on that.
I don't think it's the best example, and I'll tell you why. Because the young black man approached him in a threatening way, making gestures and asking to be shot. They see something. Yeah, he was asking for it. Not that the cop should have shot him. A lot was wrong with that. But if you want to live in a society that is gathering speed towards a police state, the last thing you want to do is do something stupid like that, because police protocols are changing as we speak. And that was not the best. The best examples are where people are peacefully demonstrating and agent provocateurs create a disturbance and the police go nuts and near beat some people half to death. That's a much better example, and we see that every time that there are demonstrations that are touching upon sensitive issues in meaningful ways and are threatening any effectiveness whatsoever. We see that today. There is a history of this in the United States. If anyone was at the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968, they can tell you that they saw brutality that won't quit. Then there was Kent State and the lies that were told by the media to try to cover that up. All the kids that were killed were at least 100 yards away from any of the shooters, the National Guard, that shouldn't have even come on that campus with ammunition. How can you throw a bag of shit, or a bag of manure, or a bag of human feces, pardon my language, but a bag of human feces 100 yards? And that's what the media was touting. Oh, well, they were being assaulted by these students who were throwing bags of doo-doo at them. And, I
hate it when that happens.
Yeah, I was living in Ohio at the time, and I went up there to a little town called Silver Lake, which is on the outskirts of Akron. And I talked to people who were there. There was no threatening gestures made by the students towards the National Guard at the time. There was a commander who went haywire, and they were looking for trouble. They created the problem, and then they shot on these students without cause.
Do you remember the song "Four Dead in Ohio" by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young?
Yeah, I do.
Gabriel, do you have any comment on any of this? You're doing films on this right now?
I did a documentary on police brutality and, police use of force, their guidelines sort of how they deal with this, what the protocol is. And as far as my comment on the video, or the clip you showed, or maybe like on the student protests, which one is it? Which comment on which?
Ferguson.
You can comment on both if you like. Comment on the second shooting at Ferguson.
I had someone say earlier on a presentation at my school, we watched a movie about a shooting, that one that happened on the subway, that guy got shot in the back when he was handcuffed, and he later died. And there was a movie that showing, and the director of that movie showed up at my school, and he was saying about this particular, if you notice the guy, he's waiting there with like a Pepsi or something. He's waiting there for the police to show up. He knows they're going to show up any minute now. And he said that if you notice the guy with the knife, he actually looks back at the crowd and walks away from the direction of the crowd towards the buildings. It seems like he didn't want anyone else to get shot except for him, and that he knew that, if they shot at him, any bullets that missed would have hit the store owner and all the witnesses behind him. So he said that, even though he was asking for it, as James said, he was one of the only people looking out for any of the other public, while the officers, they didn't change their vectors for where their bullets were going to be shot at. They pointed straight at him. and that was towards the crowd and him. So he was the only one really concerned for the public in that situation, even though he was the one prepared to die, apparently. And that's one take on it. I don't know if it's true, but, you know.
I couldn't tell from the film if the guy even had a weapon. I couldn't tell if he had a knife. He may have had a knife. I don't know.
Probably like a little tiny pocket knife.
Yeah. They could have tased him. They could have done something. They could have shot him in the leg. There were 2 policemen there with their guns drawn right there.
That's the thing. There's no protocol that says, hey, when he has a knife, you can only use your taser. You know, like, and I could have said, hey, you grab the taser, I'll grab the gun. If I miss with the taser, use the gun, you know, but like, they don't have to take that risk if they don't want to. And, you know, I guess, hell, it's more fun when you just, you know, just unleash, right? I don't know. I mean, who knows what the driving force behind pulling the gun first is, but either way, say if you were with a knife and somebody else was on the street, I mean, in California, I mean, isn't there the laws about, like, if someone comes at you with fists, you can only use fists to retaliate or defend yourself with, or, you know, have you heard of those laws? Basically, you can't, it's force on force. You can't, like, use a gun when he's just punching you or something, you know? Unless your life is really being threatened. You can't, like, get in a bar fight and then pull the gun, in other words.
Most states, it's illegal to have a weapon in any kind of bar or place that serves liquor.
I guess the point I was making is the police don't have those restrictions. If you come after them with fists, I mean, they can still shoot you. I mean, you could come after them with a knife, and, you know, that's deadly, so...
They look at it this way. They're there to enforce the law. And anybody that takes issue with them, they have to assume is willing to break the law. So, ipso facto, they're a criminal. That being said, if they're subdued in any way, they don't know whether they're going to live or not, because a person may have a weapon, a deadly weapon, and use them after they're subdued. So they're not willing to take the risk, and they're told not to take the risk. What that gentleman did, that young fella, was not a sane thing to do.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have fear for the police, just avoid them. But by all means, be civil, because, you know, they're there to enforce authority. And at the same time, I'm not defending shooting a man 9 times. I'm not defending that. But here is what's really important to remember. And that is that they're taking their lives in tow every day that they go out. And they are taught that they shouldn't take any chances with their lives, that if a person is not going to respect their authority, to be very careful, be very cautious around them, and if they make a threatening gesture, to defend themselves effectively. And effectively, in some cases, means deadly. It's sad. It's a sad commentary on the times. But that's just the way it is. And it's not because we have guns that it's that way, because you can kill a man as quickly with a knife or with a broken bottle as you can with a gun. So guns, guns are funny issues. But the police are armed with guns. And, it's a kind of contradiction if the police can have guns, but the citizenry can't. The law-abiding citizenry can't. There's an old saying that if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Well, that's a big, big saying, and it's absolutely true. And you've got these issues surrounding this caste system that the police observe that confuses issue after issue. There are a lot of police that respect our rights to have guns. There are a lot of police that don't go along with this, but they have a code within this caste, and that is to protect an officer even when he's wrong.
When they outlaw guns, they don't stop. Like some of the cities that have outlawed, carrying guns on you, the police still carry them. It's like if you just, and all you have to do is say, so if they're outlawed and no one has them, why do you have them? Oh, well, because someone who wants to break the law will still have them.
Gun control is bizarre. Gun control is just totally out of step with reality. And every country that has enforced gun control has actually raised the incidence of violent crime, because the criminals who commit these violent crimes know that the victims can't be armed. They never had these
Home invasions.
Where these, they never had that in London until they got all the guns. And then it went out of sight. And these are the most violent kinds of crimes that are committed. So I know and you know that these things that are occurring today are basically in the simple-minded person who are the very ignorant person to convince them that if we do away with guns, gun crime will end. That's not true. Everybody knows that has any experience on the street at all.
Not only that, but, some of the laws, and this kind of brings me to the other topic, making sense one way, in one sense, in one political issue, and then making no sense in the other political issues, depending, for example, they say they outlaw high-capacity magazines, right? Oh, we need to get rid of the high-capacity magazines, limit it to 10 rounds per mag. That way, if somebody wants to go shoot up the local school, they have to reload more, and it will save more lives. And you go, you know what I mean? And then you go like, okay, so let me get this straight. The guy that's going to go blast a bunch of kids away is going to sit there right before he goes out and does this. He's going to say, wait, I better not take my high-capacity magazine because I might get in trouble for possessing this. They're going to blow their head off at the end of that whole session anyways and kill themselves. Do you think they're going to really sit there and go, oh, I better not have this gun, or I better not use this magazine while I shoot all these kids, otherwise I might get in trouble? Does that make any sense?
No.
And the answer I can come up with is, do these the question I come to is like, if you have one of these lawmakers propose this law, you go, do you really think that's going to work? Think about that right now. And it's hard for me to think that they actually believe it would, because just think about that right there. It's very simple mental exercise, and you realize it's ridiculous. But I can only come to the conclusion that maybe those lawmakers really aren't thinking of it as, they're not intending the law to do the effects that they say. It's not really about keeping mass shootings from happening, because in reality, the only laws are all voluntary. Every law that's made, it's all voluntary. We all, crossing the yellow line and going in oncoming traffic, you're voluntarily keeping yourself on the other side of the road and not crossing into traffic. The same goes for these other laws. They're all self-enforced. Nobody, unless there's a guy there on every street corner and in your bedroom every morning looking through your shit, there's no way for them to enforce these laws. It's all self-enforced, and people that are law-abiding are going to follow them, and people that have nothing to lose, or people that don't care, simply just don't care, are not going to be able to, are not going to, there's nothing stopping them from not breaking it. And some people, I call them the idealists in this world, they think that they can just, legislate all these, controls over people that will keep everything safe. They think that it's a pie in the sky dream that, we're going to end violence, we're going to end crime. Really? We're going to get rid of all crime? Is that even a reasonable ambition? It's a great goal to have, but is that ever going to really happen? We're never going to stop until we end all crime?
No one commits more crime than corporate executives and politicians.
Guys, let me play a little bit of this clip I have on Sandy Hook, because this kind of fits into our discussion as well. So give me just a couple minutes here.
Yeah, Bedandi for Infowars.com, and we are at the city of Newtown, Connecticut. They're having a hearing on the Sandy Hook incident, and with me is Wolfgang Halbig. How you doing, sir?
Oh, great. Thanks for seeing me again.
Absolutely. I just got a couple questions today. One is, what inspired you? What led you to start investigating Sandy Hook?
Well, you know what? I didn't have a chance to tell the school board members tonight, but you know what? When the Connecticut State Police sends police officers to my house, and they threaten me, and they tell me that I can no no longer ask questions about the Sandy Hook school shooting. I kept thinking, isn't there freedom of speech here somewhere in America? I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen.
I think that's what called the First Amendment, right?
First Amendment. You know what the board members don't understand is they send police officers to my house, so guess what? I'm coming to their house, and I'm simply asking, okay, why in the world would you not respond to simple FOIA requests? And why would you not even return phone calls? You know, America today, we all have kids. We deserve the truth. And why in the world would you not tell the truth?
My name is Wolfgang Helbig. I'm from Lake County, Florida, a town called Sorrento, Florida. I'm a national school safety consultant. For the last 25 years, I've traveled the country. And you look at me like I'm here today to create a problem. That's the last thing I want to do. You have an incident that happened on December 14, 2012. As tragic as it was, it got national attention, worldwide attention. I was one of the first people in my community to donate money to your cause. Let me tell you something, when tragedy strikes in any community, the first thing you can do is give money, because it takes money to heal.
What's the biggest red flag in your head with the whole Sandy Hook incident?
Well, you know, as I said in there, you know what, when this happened and it unfolded, I reached in my pocket and I sent money. Guess what? We all send money. You know, this town collected $29 million from people from all across America because of the tragedy. I'm one of them. It's my pocket. And guess what? As a national school safety consultant, I couldn't believe. After a week, I'm going, no trauma helicopters? Who in the world is the incident commander who would not request the best medical care? Who would not let the paramedics and EMTs inside the school to treat the children of the parents?
Why no trauma helicopters? Why would you not let paramedics, board members, these are your children, and you wouldn't let paramedics and EMTs into the building? You got 27 children declared dead within 8 minutes? Who does this? Who is so great at that job?
And guess what? Not one parent has filed a lawsuit. This is un-American. In America, we file lawsuits. I was at Columbine, 14 children who died, every parent, filed a lawsuit. 23 children were severely shot and severely injured. Every parent filed a lawsuit. Why haven't the parents here in Sandy Hook filed a lawsuit?
I guess people quoted that there was a big circus coming to town with a bunch of conspiracy theorists, even though this is a direct onslaught on our Second Amendment, but we're a bunch of conspiracy theorists and we don't deserve to be here.
Well, and that's what people do.
James, what do you think about Sandy Hook?
I think it was staged. I don't think any children were killed. And I think that they had a community there, like travelers or gypsies, that they could corrupt. A person doing real estate records found out that many of those people in that town had had their homes paid off a year or so before on Christmas Day.
Very strange.
Well, you know, I'm not surprised that you can get a group of people to lie like dogs and betray their integrity. Well, they don't have integrity, but they have crisis actors. In many of these false flags, we have seen the same crisis actors with the nose job, a little different, whatever, but we can tell. I mean, they're not fooling people that are paying attention. They're only fooling the people that are sucking on the boob tube with the MSM. Mass media.
Yeah. Yeah, the actors are not even that good. You know, they're not even...
No. They've had them with respect to the wars in the Middle East. And if you look in the background, you can see buildings, and I'm sure that there are people that can say, well, that's in my hometown. It's just, you know, they underestimate the American public. It's true, they're a sleeping giant when you look at them collectively, but they're waking up. And it's like I said, 2 days without food, and everything will turn around. Because then they've heard what people like us have had to say. And we may still be considered conspiracy theorists, or maybe we're, on the wrong side of their equation. But when they've heard it, it's in there somewhere. It's in their skull somewhere. It's going to snap together when they go 2 days without food, because they know there's no reason for that. No reason unless it was intended.
Amen.
Oh, go ahead, Gabriel, if you want to comment.
Oh, that was
Ryan.
So you go without food and water, nothing motivates someone quicker than that.
Yeah.
And what I see as an epidemic in, the sleeping giant is outrage without action. And you have all these people who sit back and pretend to be outraged and yet do nothing about it. I think we got to fix that epidemic as well. It was just an epidemic of people being angry without doing anything about it, and
they'll just text about it, like everybody's so used to indirect confrontation. Nobody wants to be confrontational ever. And then in the end of the day, they're just talking shit. They're not doing anything. Like, even in my the longer I live, the less I pay attention to what people do or say, and more to what they do. Actions, I pay attention to people's actions. And what we see is when you don't do something, like when it comes to any sort of bad behavior, when you let it go, let it happen, and don't put a stop to it physically, or actually do something about it, it's the same as saying it's okay. You become an enabler of the problem. It's like that with alcoholics, narcotic abusers, people like your dog. If your dog's barking and you don't do anything, the dog's just gonna always bark. And people need to correct. I'm a strong believer in negative feedback when it comes to things that you don't like. When something happens, you have to act right away. You have to do something right away. If the dog shits on the carpet, you don't beat the dog a week later and then, expect it to not do it again or something. You have to take care of this situation when it happens right away. And people tend to delay it, and then they don't, or they just tend not to do anything. And then the issue is never corrected. That's the only thing that was good about Ferguson is right away people were out there in the streets, and everyone can have a clear line of consequence. When you do this, this happens. And when somebody does this, this happens. But if this happened a week later, you might not have seen even the same police response. But the police in Ferguson were ready to go. They were ready to rock and roll. They were like, oh yeah, you want to complain about it? Well, we're going to come out there with force. And that actually bit them in the butt, because the media saw these amped up police officers, and that made this issue a more national, in public awareness issue.
One thing I would like to hear or know about is what that shopkeeper told the police when he called them in Ferguson. Did he say that he had been threatened mortally or not?
Wasn't there something about him saying that he never was robbed, ever? It was just...
Well, there's a video when this young man is leaving the store. He pushes the shopkeeper. But there was no weapon. There was no actual threat of any more than that. But he pushes him like the guy was trying to stop him. Maybe thought he was taking something, and he just pushes him out of the way and walks out. But maybe he exaggerated when he called the police. And the police thought that this guy was armed or violently belligerent.
It's the only way to get him to show up anyways, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I have a clip here. I think this is a guy named Dorian Johnson, who was an eyewitness account to the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson. So let's listen to this.
We wasn't causing any harm to nobody. We had no weapons on us at all.
Dorian Johnson says he was walking home from a convenience store with his friend Mike Brown. They were walking on the street when a Ferguson police officer from his vehicle told the boys to get out of the street. Johnson says they kept walking, causing the officer to confront the boys, first from his car, then got out of the car, firing a shot. Johnson says him and Brown were scared and ran away from the officer.
He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the air, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
Instantly, hundreds gathered, angered and saddened by what they call a complete overreaction by the officer. Now a family is demanding answers.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate? You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where I feel like I got nothing to live for anyway. They're gonna try to take me out anyway.
The crowd became more angered, even someone firing shots. No one was hurt. Meanwhile, Brown's body laid in the street for hours.
The shots that were being fired were very close to that scene, so we needed to make sure that the crime scene was safe. That's why we called for the additional officers so that we could safely, without conflict, move everyone back far enough.
Ferguson Police Chief Tom Jackson says the St. Louis County Police Department is handling the investigation into the officer shooting and says as standard procedure, the officer has been put on paid administrative leave.
We do want this investigated fully, and that's why we asked for the outside help to do that.
James, can you comment on the Michael Brown shooting?
Well, I saw the video, and it doesn't appear to be exactly like the other gentleman described. What I saw was that he is walking towards the policeman saying, "Go ahead and shoot me, go ahead and shoot me." And that's when the officer starts firing. Of course, I think that it was poor policing. Don't think that that officer is fit to be a policeman. A very, very poor judgment. I think he was hysterical. Just judging by the fact that he tried to put handcuffs on a corpse. He was in hysterics as far as I'm concerned. It's the only explanation I can have for that.
That was the second shooting that you're talking about. This
was it the second? Okay.
Yeah, this is the first shooting. I've heard different accounts.
I have too. I've heard so many different accounts. But the one I saw doesn't suit that scenario.
I mean, who knows really what happened with that guy? I mean, but either way, I mean, you have a bullet, or you have a guy who got shot a bunch of times, you know, and from what I've heard,
for no reason, you know.
Well, he didn't have a gun on him, and either way, it would have been back to square one. Well, too much discretion. I felt threatened, so I shot him because I thought he was going to kill me. Well, you know, it's pretty easy to kill someone when that's all you need to say. And, I mean, people have said that, I think I read somewhere that there was a 2-second delay after he put his hands up before he was shot again. And I think that's when he was shot again in the head. But, you know, there's so much information, misinformation, people trying to cover for everybody. I mean, you know, I think maybe it's sort of, it was that, the way the police handled it, it was meant to be sort of confusing. There were so many different stories to go around. You know, everyone's just, it's just going to blur together, so everyone just goes, oh, well, who knows what happened? The guy was asking for it. Boom. End of story, you know?
In Ferguson, we had 2 shootings, and we have mixed information on both. But I wonder if somehow this event was created, or they somehow, I mean, not a staged thing like Sandy Hook where no one was killed, but an event where they kind of put the people in place to cause this to happen. James, am I way off? What do you think about that?
No, I don't think you're way off. Of course, I go into what I jokingly call the paranoid punk pig mode. When I saw the video and then I read about both cases, I don't believe in coincidence. And, you know, people that don't believe in coincidence are, just by virtue of that, to most people, conspiracy theorists, right? You know? But I think that easily it could have been implemented to happen because you had a policeman who shouldn't be carrying a gun. Number one. Mm-hmm. You have a scenario where you have a young man that behaves like a lunatic. He really did. He really did. Now, I don't know about the Brown case, but the case that I saw the video of, the young man, he didn't behave violent, but he went out there and he was making gestures that anybody would think of as, what the hell is he going to do next? If I had been a policeman, I would have put my gun away. I would have put it in the back of my belt where I could draw it, and if I really needed it, I would have put it away, stepped back, and said, stop where you are. Don't advance any further.
Right.
But he didn't.
Right.
Now, I don't see anything wrong with that stance. I see nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it was very hastily escalated, it seems, by every account.
I mean, you had someone that was behaving in an unnatural way, but you had, on the other hand, you had a policeman who became, to my thinking, hysterical.
Yeah.
The fact that he tried to put handcuffs on a corpse,
Right, exactly. Are the powers that be trying to create a civil war in the United States so they can bring in martial?
Yeah, they've been trying to create a civil war between blacks and whites. It hadn't taken. For all the glop that the powers that be, the elite, spout, they are very racist. They take jabs at low-income people. They consider homeless people vermin. They have an answer for everything, and usually that answer is, well, you're a useless eater. This rubs off on some of their minions, and they are trying to institute this way of thinking into the police and the military. They're trying to dehumanize these people the same way they dehumanize their young.
I have another clip. This is a clip of the police firing tear gas at the protesters in Ferguson. Didn't they actually fire tear gas at the media as well?
Oh, they'll fire tear gas at any witnesses that they don't want there.
Anyone holding a camera.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gabriel, you know what I would recommend as an approach to your study, and I know you have made a spectacular video, and I know you got what it takes. So when I worked for the Postal Service, I wondered about some of their methods. So eventually, a supervisor I worked for, who I liked, I was asking him about a couple of things, and he said, you ought to look up the studies that are done by the think tank that the Postal Service uses. And I said, who is that? And he said, Westinghouse. So I did. You need to find the think tank that is creating all these symposiums that they're sending the police to, and read their crap. You really do. It'll be very eye-opening.
Well, aren't the veterans considered the next terrorists?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they know how to defend themselves. Anybody that can effectively defend themselves is a potential terrorist because they can resist effectively. And if there wasn't something to resist, something that these people felt right in resisting, there wouldn't be any problem, would there? But when you're going to mandate vaccines that are known to be poisonous, when you're going to try to chip everybody, when these people have investigated and found out, well, if that chip is turned off, I can't get anything. I can't get food. I can't get what I need to pay my rent or whatever. You know, it goes right back to the biblical admonitions, doesn't it? And there are people that are still influenced by those biblical admonitions. And, of course, the powers that be that want to institute the New World Order want very much to follow the book of Revelation, because the faithful who are waiting for the rapture will sit on their hands to be delivered unto the gates of heaven, right? They'll do nothing. They'll do nothing.
Your reward will be great in heaven.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and then the woo-woo crowd of the alternative media is just as bad. Well, just think wonderful thoughts and...
Lead your heart out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know...
what I can't stand is the, bleed your heart out, cry as loud as you can in the streets on your knees, and hold up your sign that says, "Stop beating me," while the police officer beats you and takes you away and pepper sprays you. We saw some of that from the hippie crowd, sort of, and they had the right idea. At least they were out there and they showed up. But like with the Occupy Wall Street movement,
well,
they don't understand how far it is, how bad it is. That
when the police become a bigger problem than the demonstrators, they don't need to be there.
The problem is we're at this crossroads where there's this, well, I think this kind of touches on the list of topics I have, but it basically goes into the fact that, we have this system that we're supposed to be able to work within to appeal and change certain things. But then people that fight the good fight and do everything legally and try to get everything changed through legal means, it's like a merry-go-round. It just spins faster and faster until people just get thrown off, and they run out of money for lawyers, or they just run out of energy to keep appealing some certain law or something, And eventually you find, like, they had the same thing happen with the school systems. They can't fire any of the teachers, that even if the teacher has, like, almost assaulted a kid, unless they get arrested, they can't fire them because of tenure, And people find is that this system, like with the school system, it's set up more to make sure that all the adults get along within that system, within the school system, make sure that they all have job security, they can't be fired, and everything has to go through a bureaucracy to affect change. If they want one thing, they say, hey, we want more money for schools, and it goes onto 5 people's desks before it can ever get approved, and by the end of it, you get a totally different request than what you put in at the beginning of the system. And what I've come to the conclusion is, I think the police force is set up in a similar way. I just came to the conclusion that this system, what if it's just not designed to work ever? What if it was never designed to work? What if it was just meant to impede progress, keep things from changing, keep things the same? If it's just meant for you to kind of like jump through the hoops and keep you busy while nothing gets changed and eventually you drop off anyways. I think that the system was never really meant to work in the first place.
It was never meant to work to serve the people.
Well, and I feel like these Occupy Wall Street protesters are at that crossroads where their good fight, it's reached its limit. Like, you're at that limit where just talk and just talking is going to be done,
If the powers that be, in their talking head, President Obama, are willing to talk about World War III, why would they not talk about revolution? They're stirring the fires of revolution. Mm-hmm. And if you understand what revolution is, and I often refer to a man who was living in the Russia before communism, Pjotr Kropotkin, Prince Pjotr Kropotkin, who wrote Memoirs of a Revolutionary. And what he said has rung very true with me through the years. He said, ideology does not make a revolutionary. The police make a revolutionary. And he was right.
We're talking about police brutality, and we've also kind of gotten into this whole notion of the New World Order, which James brought up. I have this very interesting clip where Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters talks about Putin, and he says that he thinks Obama does not believe in this country.
The bottom line on this is Russia has a real leader. You may not like him, and I don't, but he is brilliant and ruthless. He has clear goals, and he moves straight toward those goals. The West lacks a leader. Like it or not, the President of the United States is the de facto leader of the West, and our President just is he's incapable and unwilling to lead. The weakness is phenomenal. Now, we are not as weaker than we were in the Carter years. I was in that military. It was pathetic. Our military today is the best in the world. best in our history, although Obama wants to dismantle it. We're also immensely wealthier than the Carter years. The problem is that as a president, Obama is far weaker than Carter, and he's probably the worst president we've ever had. He is a man who is incapable of making a hard decision. And by the way, one other key point. Vladimir Putin believes in Russia. He believes in Russia's destiny, its mission. Obama does not believe in American exceptionalism. He does not
John,
believe
hang on. That is a powerful commentary. KT gets the last word.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right.
James, does our president believe in America?
He is a new world order tool, and they wanted to destroy nationalism and put everything in the world in the hands of a corporate dictatorship that is based on a feudal, totalitarian model. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is research the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which Obama backs. Now, a lot of people have a hard time imagining a president of the United States not finding his own destiny and his own sense of authority and relevance over power to be synonymous with the goals, aspirations, and success of his nation. But that's not why Obama is in there. Obama is in there to destroy all of that, and he's doing it. Just like Gorbachev destroyed the Soviet Union, Obama is going to destroy the United States.
Is Obama's real name Barry Soetoro?
Yes, it is. He was born in Kenya.
Was he put in power by the CIA?
Yes.
Or the NSA?
No, the CIA.
CIA. So, do you consider him a CIA operative then?
No. Bill Clinton, when he was at Georgetown, was a snitch for the CIA. Doesn't make him belong to the CIA. It just means that he'll align with the CIA over most of their goals. If you want to know, for instance, what Bill Clinton is, it's very easy. He had a mentor. And the mentor, when he was at Georgetown, was Carroll Quigley, and he owns up to that. Now, Carroll Quigley was a trilateralist who wrote a book. The title of the book is Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time. And this book is an analysis, basically, of why trilateralism is necessary to determine and rule the affairs of the world. Now, everybody talks about the CFR, the Council of 300, the Bilderbergers. You don't hear too much of the Trilateral Commission, and they're the core of it.
Are our presidents chosen way ahead of time?
Yes, they're tailored. Now, I'm talking about since JFK. They made sure that no one would get there that had the inclinations, the scope, the brilliance, and the integrity of JFK. So what do? They find somebody with a character flaw that they can control them through. With Bill Clinton, it's obvious what his is. With Barry Soetoro, it is obvious what his is. They could bring him down any time just by revealing that he is not eligible to hold office in the United States. So they have him. It's a blackmail card.
So are our elections kind of a farce then?
They're controlled. This was determined in the runoff between Gore and Bush. There was a lady that found out that there was a area in Florida where the votes gave Gore a negative amount. Now, that can't occur, honestly. So she began investigating the people and the machines that were used, and she found out that the smart card that's used in the Diebold machines can be hacked. And so she got the funding from private people and got some computer specialists involved, and they determined it could be, and they demonstrated it. There were Senate hearings over this, And they brought Diebold up on it, and they said, hey, this is bad. And Diebold said, well, we'll fix the problem. Just keep letting us use our machines. And they did. Like it never happened.
Promise it won't happen the next election.
Yeah.
I swear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I promise. It's just like the corruptions that went on in Scotland over the referendum they had elections for. And they're having a lot of trouble now because, the Scots are not a people to play games with. They're very independent thinking people. The Crown made a big mistake sending its minions in there to corrupt that electoral process and then to use their thugs to come in and try and cause trouble, which they did, and they're doing now. So what you have is you have a power system that has gone nuts. They've gone nuts in England, they've gone nuts in the United States, and I sort of agree that you wanted the power behind Obama. It's the throne of England.
You said something really interesting there, James. We have a power system that's gone nuts. And it's really interesting, this whole chemistry that you and I get going, because, like you said, there's no coincidences. I just happen to have these clips. It's not like I planned this all out. I want to play a physicist named Richard Seed, who's saying that we're going to become gods through transhumanism. And then after this clip, James, I want you to comment on transhumanism. Here you go. This is so bizarre. Just a second.
And, by the way, it's not nice people that run it. It's an artificial system like fractional reserve banking and derivatives and high-frequency trading meant to scam you and end the free market as we know it and create a monopoly. One system, one unified, hellish collective with engineered food, water, everything. I mean, it's just a whole new world. The globalists want to be God. They want to control the universe. Human cloning researcher Richard Seed, he says, when the shift hits the fan, I will be God. And that's what Ray Kurzweil, all of them say. We're doing this. You're not going to stop us. And you're going to become one of us if we even let you, or we'll sit on you like a bug. Here he is saying, I will be God. I will be God.
We're going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, we'll have big trouble. And we'll have warfare.
I mean, this is who these people are. You interfere with me becoming God, you're going to have big problems. You're going to have warfare. Have people on like Major General Stubblebine, former head of Special Forces and you name it. And he's like, no, the elite are obsessed with life extension. Of course they are. And they believe they've got to build this to get it. And the point is, we aren't in the equation to get the resources. You're not going to get the life extension. Look at Obamacare. You're going to get a cane instead of a knee surgery. Yeah, you get free health care. Here's some glasses. You don't get eye surgery.
A power system that has gone mad. That's what you said, James. And Richard Seed is the perfect example of the insanity of the elite. Can you comment on this whole trend?
Well, I'm surprised that Alex Jones hasn't figured it out. But, of course, he's an alarmist and, to that degree, a gatekeeper. But let me say this. Transhumanism is another delusion, like the escape that the elite think that they can use to avoid the results of their messing up the earth. Transhumanism only came to the fore after Fukushima because they know that they have caused an extinction event with Fukushima. They know that if it's uncontrolled, it will end all mammalian life on this planet. Plus, there'll probably be other reactors that contribute too. But what transhumanism is, it's a self-delusion that we can use science and we can use technology to survive Fukushima, although, of course, it's only going to be available to the elites. But we can do that, and that'll make us synonymous with gods. And, this horse manure, it's a lie. It's a delusion. They have got to dream up something, and you see, their scientists can only tell them what they want to hear. Science is not advanced on this planet since the military-industrial complex became their almost sole proprietors. Because they're compartmentalized, security, designations, all this. No one can get an overview to get anywhere except the deluded. It's kind of like a catch-22. It is a catch-22.
It's not just transhumanism, but dehumanization.
Same difference.
Right.
Same difference. What does that monster say? He says, if you get in my way... He doesn't have to say the rest of it, does he?
Right.
This kind of goes into the whole cremation of care thing as well.
Exactly. Why has it taken so long for people to figure out what cremation of care means? It means a destruction of all empathy for anyone that's not a member of our club.
Wow. That's huge. Now, James, you were talking about technology not moving ahead. Isn't it true
technology has, but not science. These are two entirely different. Technology can give you methodology. Science gives you understanding.
Hasn't some of Maxwell's equations been hidden from us, and we're only given part of the real physics?
Of course. Of course. You are fed that electricity is electrons going down like pool balls. Bang, bang, bang. They're right next to you. That is the biggest crock there ever was. If Tesla could broadcast electricity, then it's a field. It's not electrons. It's a field, right?
That's really interesting.
Wireless charging has really come of age these days.
Yeah.
Japan was talking about putting solar panels around. They put it up there as a theory, that, they could beam microwaves back down to Earth by putting solar panels up there, If it's just bowling balls or, just electrons, then how do you really do that? Unless it's a field,
Yeah, it's a field. The mind. People think the brain is the mind. The brain is a lump of meat. The mind is a field created by the brain.
Wow.
I can give you an example. I wrote an article for UFO Updates, and I wrote two. There was two companion articles, one where I showed an example of this man having all the brain removed above the brainstem and becoming a veritable genius. He was a colonel in the UN, and during a relief effort that he was leading in North Africa, it was being filmed. The UN wanted to make a promo film out of it. And his beret blew off, and his whole side of his head was sunken in massively. And when some anthropologists saw that, they said, oh my God, that's an example of Stone Age trephining. And so they arranged to contact him and find out where this had been done, the tribal shaman that had done it, and went to see him. It never occurred to them, how can this man be a genius? And he was. He hadn't been educated. He had had numerous head injuries from mock warfare with other tribes in his region. And finally, the shaman did this massive trephining on him and had to remove his brain because it had bone in it. And he learned all these languages afterwards and got a commission in the UN. And his wife, when they go to visit this shaman, they come across his wife and she explains all this. And about all these other men in the tribe that have had this. And they're good men now. They were drunkards. They wouldn't work. And all these women standing around, they wanted to protect that shaman. You cannot find that video now.
Some of our science, some of what passes as science is kind of a joke, don't you think?
It's all a joke. Your cosmology of the universe is based on Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah. Explain that. Elaborate, James. Please elaborate.
Well, for so long, it was a sin to talk about the sun being the center of the solar system.
Right.
And, along comes Copernicus and Galileo Galilei, and, Galileo Galilei got in trouble because he saw moons around Jupiter. He had a little telescope and he could see it. And so, he wanted to talk about it. So he was excommunicated. He was brought before the Inquisition. Well, it hasn't changed that much. My deceased friend, Kevin Smith, did a show on 3 planets that are in the solar system that have never been admitted as planets.
Really?
And then there was a symposium, and at this symposium, an astronomer got up and started talking about them. And he was walked out of the building, and everything he said was removed from the record. And Kevin started doing some more study, and he found out that everything that an astronomer finds out that's new, whether it's a new planet or comet or whatever, he has to send all of his work, all of his notes to the Office of Astronomical Telegrams. And they will decide whether it's made public or not.
James, do you think Kevin Smith was killed?
I talked to him the day before he died. And he was in good spirits. He was looking forward to something. Had something on his mind because he asked me if I'd be on the show with him on Monday. And he had something in mind, I think, because he was excited. And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And he said, I haven't decided yet. But he had something, and how I wish that we gotten into that. But in the discussion, he said, well, I was told not to drink any coffee and cut back on my smoking. And I said, well, you don't drink that much coffee. When you stayed with me, you were drinking maybe as much as 6 cups a day. And he says, well, I normally drink 5 or 6 pots of coffee a day. And I said, Kevin, you can't get away with that.
My goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what he told me. And so I guess the reason he didn't drink any more coffee than that is that's all I drink. And since it was my place, he felt like he shouldn't pig out.
We were talking about other planets in our solar system. I want to play just it's a longer clip, but I'll just play a little of it. It talks about Kepler 22b. Now, they've discovered a whole bunch of Earth-like planets that they're not talking about on the mainstream. You have to go searching for these things. So I'm going to play a little bit of this, and then we'll discuss it.
On December 5th, 2011, the Kepler science team announced that they had confirmed a planet, roughly the size of ours, in an orbit around a star very similar to the Sun. What's more, the distance of this planet from its star was perfect. It wasn't too close, and it wasn't too far away. If this planet were the Earth, life could live there. Its name, Kepler 22b.
So, James, is there life out there?
You know what that planet is?
No, I don't know.
It's your primary timeline.
Okay, now we're going to go down the rabbit hole. Please tell us about the primary timeline.
Well, the continuum was disturbed when Napoleon went in the Great Pyramid overnight by himself. and he was interfered with, and the chip was put in his head, which was a Generation 4 Clipper chip made by Motorola, which had just been perfected in September of last year.
Now now my brain is twisted up in a pretzel. So a chip was put in Napoleon's head during Napoleon's lifetime, but the chip was just finished last year. That means somebody's traveling in time, right?
That's right. And when you do that, and you affect the continuum, what happens is you create an offshoot timeline. And we're in it right now.
Now, this is not good news, I don't think.
No, it's not. But let me tell you something. I tell everybody that if they have trouble getting their mind around that, to do one thing. Get a software program that will give them a fix on the sky at a specific time at any location on Earth. And type in your location sometime at night, get a fix on the sky, go outside and look at the sky, and the way it's supposed to be, it won't be, at least 2 times in 1 week. At least.
So this Kepler 22b is the primary Earth, and we're kind of a secondary Earth, another timeline?
That's right.
So we're living in a different space-time configuration than the real Earth.
Yes, you are. I call it a partial manifestation. You're an experiment.
That's comforting. Are we the only different space-time configuration, or are there many different space-time configurations in our galaxy?
No, it gets cleaned up when something like this happens. You have a split consciousness, which is unique. And it was important to determine whether or not that is survivable, whether any culture, any civilization can overcome its aberrancy, which you have, to erect a stable, non-suiciding culture with any longevity. And so far you failed miserably. And this is your 7th try.
So this timeline will get cleaned up, you said? What does exactly that mean?
Well, Stephen King wrote a book, and a movie was made out of it. And the only sense that it makes is the cleaning up of a secondary timeline or an offshoot timeline.
Do the electromagnetic vehicles that we've talked about before, do they clean up these other timelines that really shouldn't exist like ours?
I am not disposed to give them a violent or threatening disposition, but their energy is used for that.
So I'm kind of treading on areas where you're not really allowed to talk about too much.
I'll talk about anything. You're so close to the turning of the road, I'll tell you anything you ask. I know that our 2 guests probably think I've gone off into Never Never Land. And because, they are probably not familiar with any of the things that I've said and done on other shows.
Well, they can certainly look up your EMBS info. Is it embsinfo.blogspot.com and catch up? So
would it be possible if we go into maybe more of the SWAT? I was actually other topics I wanted to get into, which was like SWAT raids and our monetary system.
Yes. Why don't you do that? Because I'd be very interested in what you have to say. You're a fresh mind on this.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say about Obama, as far as when you were talking about The thing that kind of stands out about, there's one thing he said in a certain speech, and he said something like, right now, at this very moment, there are terrorists in our country training to take American lives. And I said, yeah, there probably is. There's probably a terrorist somewhere. And then I'm like, but he doesn't tell you what terrorists he's referring to. And then he says American lives. He doesn't tell you, is it civilian lives? What, And you assume that that's what he means. But then you realize when protests are considered low-level terrorism, when militias are considered terrorists, he could be talking about anybody that, wants to shoot back at a tyrannical, say if a militia was training right now, they train all the time to take tyrannical American lives, American lives aren't sacred by nature. I mean, there can be bad American lives that you need to train to take, right? I mean,
it's a politicized speech. But here's the question that I want to ask about all that. He comes out and says something like that and then persists in keeping an open border. If he's concerned about that, how can this is so disingenuous.
Yeah. Well, and what Ryan was saying was a lot of politicians, what doesn't make sense is they'll make sense 1 minute about one thing, and then the next minute it's like a totally different logic they're following. And as Ryan pointed out to me, he said, maybe that's because it's not really their ideas in the first place. They're just reading off the ideas of somebody else. Or
He's got a good point. He's got a good point.
And, like the whole SWAT team, police raids, we've been getting into this issue. People are training to fight against this type of raid. This raid has been sort of championed by police as a great way to enter someone's house and take them into custody, as opposed to knocking and saying open up. When in fact it makes it just as dangerous for both the occupants inside and the police. I mean, the police go in and they get shot in the face, and then they try to charge the guy that shot him. Oh, you killed an officer, capital murder, you're going to the gas chamber, bye-bye, but they're the ones that caused it because they didn't knock. You have a big explosion go off in your bedroom and your ears start ringing and you have people in masks around you and you start shooting if you had a gun near you. And they get killed, or the people in the house get killed, and then they blame it on the person in the house. And it's like, this tactic doesn't benefit anybody, but you end up with a tragedy at hand, and that's the consequence for it. But then they want to say, oh, well, it's because their guns are not locked up in the safe. They caused the problem, and then it's everyone else's fault. And then we need to make changes, like we need to make sure your guns are in a safe at home. That way you can't shoot. That way we can conduct these raids at minimal risk in case you are but then again, that goes back into the law-abiding citizens and not law-abiding citizens. And then I guess the other part of this whole thing I was really wondering about was the monetary system. I think Ryan, he hasn't really talked very much, but I invited him to talk about the monetary system, where our money comes from. Maybe you can ask a few questions for him. Ryan, would you like to let your opinions out on that situation?
Yeah, for sure. When I first started waking up, kind of going through that transition of cognitive dissonance, everything to me, I kept, I just kind of had that old saying, follow the money, follow the money, where's it going? And, I've been stuck on that ever since. And like the whole Ukraine thing, everything always comes back to money, doesn't it? How do you get a militarized police? Well, you gotta pay for it, you gotta give them old military equipment,
Well, and I've said this before that, they were talking about getting rid of guns in LA and Los Angeles. They don't want people to have guns, or personal protection, in other words. And I can only say is like, well, what if that's just so that they are more dependent on, that way they can inflate their budgets for the police force more and get more money. That way, because if nobody can take care of a problem themselves, everyone has to dial 911. Well, you need more people. You need more police officers on the street. You need a bigger police force, not a smaller one, if they're all depending on you for their lives. And, that comes down to money too. I mean, you can only do that if there's a need for more police. And if there's not a need, you can't do that. Well, if nobody needs police to take care of them because they're all armed or prepared, then the police goes bye-bye. They don't want that to happen. I mean, I don't think they would. So far, every system that's set up in government is meant for job security. Like, the system is meant to make sure that they don't lose officers, they don't lose teachers, they keep everybody in-house and nobody loses their job.
Well, police are there to protect the interest of whatever entity pays for them, whether it's your city or your county or your government, you know. They protect an entity above them. And my city is incorporated. I thought mixing corporations and city-state stuff is fascism, you know. In my understanding of a basic dictionary, anyway. And so, you know, the police are just there to protect an entity. Of course the city's going to come out and think they're in the right. It's their butt on the line.
Ryan, tell us what is fascism?
Well, according to Mussolini.
No, you got to say it the way you told me.
Well, you know, according to Mussolini, it's when a corporation merges with state power. So a good example of that is when a corporation lobbies for state power, that's fascism. And it's looked up to like it's capitalism, but really it's fascist in nature. Allowing a corporation to control the state and vice versa. And we always see that. Right now, Congress is going on vacation. Why? So they can campaign, you know, and promise free stuff that they're going to have to borrow from a bank, you know, and pay with our own interest. And it's just a funny little paradigm no one seems to recognize.
Well, and like you said earlier, you know, people say, what happens every time you wake up, Ryan? You wake up and you smell the fascism.
I've certainly grown a little more cynical over the last few years.
Remember you were telling me that. You're like, every day I wake up and I smell the stench of tyranny and I see a little fascism here and there and there. And I can't stand the stench. And then everybody else just wakes up and they're, oh, what a beautiful day.
You know, I've certainly come to the impression that people's fascism detectors broke in right after the 40s and 50s. I think people recognized it, and it's just been transferred into something else a little bit more socially acceptable, I think.
I have a clip here that kind of plays into this whole idea of a police state, fascism, and let's listen to this clip, and then I'm going to bring us back to this topic you guys have brought up.
Our reporters went in there with an open mind. Sha'Carri Jackson was going to college for RTF and criminology. His whole family is extremely conservative when it comes to things like the police. And Sha'Carri has told me that it's just outrageous what's going on. So has Joe Biggs, who's a combat veteran, multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a war hero, written up in Rolling Stone and Esquire. So he went in there with an open mind. He doesn't hate police. A lot of his friends are cops. This is outrageous on so many fronts how they're trying to spin it. There is video we're going to play here in a moment for TV viewers. For radio listeners, it's up on Infowars.com with our own video of it. We don't just have the video like Al Jazeera has. We have the audio of an Al Jazeera crew with big cameras, lights, doing their news report, being fired at with tear gas and rubber bullets. You see Sha'Carri behind them running away in the video. And then the SWAT team runs up and dismantles. They fire tear gas at them. Then as they run, rubber bullets were then fired. The media doesn't even have that part. Sha'Carri was there. Biggs was hit. And then they run up and tear the cameras apart. So mainline TV crews, folks, who are 500 yards away or more, are being attacked. And I couldn't tweet last night. We went and did a test. Kit Daniels did, set up a new Twitter, sent out the Joe Biggs video, the live feed. They suspended the account, turned it back.
So, James, this is amazing what we're seeing here. During the Ferguson riots, the police came up and even started taking down the cameras and the lights of journalists. I mean, this is really over the top, don't you think?
Well, it plays into this being a staged event. Only, you know, unlike Sandy Hook, people were killed. Well, how do you condition people to accept police brutality in a police state? You get them accustomed to it. Let me ask you guys a question, all of you. Wherever you live, do you ever experience going out on the road and having a lane blocked off? You get up to the point, there's a traffic jam now, but you get up to the point where these warnings no longer apply and it's free to travel, and there's never any reason for the lane to have been blocked off. Have you experienced that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to know what that is? That's regimentation. Regimentation. Get you used to being put in a line so you can be dealt with and your ID taken and step out of the car. We're going to put a chip in your head. Yeah. There is one expression I'd like to see you look into, Gabriel, and that is social engineering.
Right.
It's a field in itself. We finally have had the monsters admit that geoengineering is going on. Finally, after 25 years of chemtrails. Next, they'll admit social engineering.
Well, yeah, like the whole DUI checkpoints. I mean, nobody likes a drunk driver. I sure don't, especially when they plow into you at 50 miles per hour. But people were saying about the police, it's like, yeah, you're doing this now, checking for drunk drivers. But next thing you know, they're going to be checking for, your paperwork, all this other stuff that could lead you into, that might not be about public safety at all. It's just about, like public order and policy,
They take somebody's agenda.
They're conditioning, though, the police to get used to doing these types of things,
Well, they take a group like MAD. These are women, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and they have a legitimate purpose. But any time that a group falls into a single-mindedness agenda, where no concern, no finer inspection of an example or whatever is, they're just fanatic. They take them and they use them to take more of your privacy, more of your rights, and more of your freedoms away.
You saw that with, wasn't it the feminist movement against domestic violence, and then that kind of sparked the whole campaign against, it started prohibition against alcohol.
Well, that wasn't feminism, that was suffragists. Now, originally the suffragettes were after the vote. They wanted the vote for women. They absolutely should have had it. I would be with them 100%. You would too. But when they got to going and they got some political power, some clout, they sold out for prohibition.
Yeah, but wasn't there they were against domestic violence. The husbands were getting drunk and beating up.
Well, they blamed it on demon rum.
Yeah.
They blamed it on demon rum. Well, it's true we are not at our best when we imbibe. None of us are. However, there are brutes that don't need to imbibe to be brutes, right?
Yeah, right. Take my ex, for example.
You had one of those, huh? I had a violent wife once, too.
It's okay, James. We've all had a run-in with a brute.
Yeah.
You brought up something very important there, James, weather modification, chemtrails. I want to play just a short clip on that.
This scientific dictatorship admits in their public documents that they've studied all of that and they've built a scientific dictatorship so people can't get out of it. And this guy recently declassified chemtrails, and it made almost no news, and said, yeah, we've been spraying with barium salts and aluminum dioxide. What do you say to that?
What is the chemtrails? What's the purpose of the chemtrails? Is it weather control?
Yes. He says geoengineering or terraforming to save us from global warming.
There's certainly a difference in the way the clouds look. If you look at some clouds that are way up high, some trails from jets, it's like they dissipate. They're in the air like they always have been, and then as the plane is moving, you can actually see them dissipate. But then you have these other ones that they linger and they spread out and they literally become clouds. In L.A., they're everywhere. You know, I don't know what that is. Honestly, I have not looked into it.
Well, the incredible thing is scientists that were outside the government did test it, did look at it. They said it's barium salts.
How did they test it? They went up in the air and scooped it up?
Yes, they used aircraft and also got ground samples. And they said this is barium salts, aluminum dioxide, weather modification, nuclei. They declassified some of it 5 years ago. I got Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons, on. Then 8 months ago, Holdren, the White House science czar, gives a press conference and says, we've been studying it, and it's aluminum dioxide, barium salts. We're doing it to save you. And it turns out a guy got a Nobel Prize in 92 for developing it.
Anyway, James, we've only got about 4 minutes left. Can you give us a quick rundown on chemtrails?
They're a delivery system. First of all, they don't do anything about moderating weather, moderating sunlight. They did quite the opposite. And I'll show you the proof of that. In the last 3 years, we have had more and more of the white light. It's been killing trees. It's been killing ivy, everything, all over the country, all over the world. Why? Because the chemtrails kill a microscopic bacteria that helps filter the sunlight. And we are getting white light instead of the yellow light we used to get. The more white the light is, the more full spectrum it is.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah,
now,
well, you won't hear anybody else talk about it, but I'm telling you the truth.
That's what I was hearing from Geoengineering Watch. And he was looking around our area, and he's noticing the same thing. The south side of all our trees are fried crispy.
That's right. That's right.
You know.
Well, you know, it would seem to me that if the monsters were really interested in improving the quality of life on Earth, they would have done something about Fukushima. Right?
Absolutely.
We only have a few minutes left, right? Maybe,
Bryan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Bryan, maybe you should talk about silver or yeah.
Right now, you know, I'd say the greatest threat to humankind right now would have to be the derivatives bubble. I know most people don't know what that is, you know. But
yeah, I do. You're right.
Everything is a derivative of everything else. The U.S. dollar, where does it get its value from? Well, it derives its value from every other dollar in existence. So, you know, if they print too many of them, the value goes down. So everything is a derivative.
And the petrodollar can't be propping it up anymore, can it?
No, well, that's what we're going to go to war for, you know, honestly. Yeah. That's how they're going to prop it up. We're going to go to war. And that's going to keep Ponzi scheme alive for a little bit longer. They'll use their classic problem reaction solution. Set you up, let you grieve in it for a while, and then magically they'll have some solution that fits their agenda. And quite frankly, they're really brilliant at pulling it off. You know, we got to give credit where credit's due.
Okay, folks, that's the show. I want to thank Gabriel, I want to thank Bryan, Ryan, and James, of course.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed these young men. Fresh minds, fresh thinking. Enjoyed them tremendously.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Welcome.